Good afternoon. Happy Pride. And welcome to the Writers Showcase presented by Vancouver's Writers Fest and Vancouver Pride Society. My name is Rabbit Richards, and I come from the occupied territory of the Lenape in Brooklyn, New York. My people have not spent more than one generation ever anywhere, so it's a bit of a spread. As much knowledge as we have of the history, my father's people are Jewish. They trace back to Kiev and Minsk. My mother's people call St. Thomas and St. Croix home, which is where they found themselves after the Danish colonized those islands belonging to the Carib, Arawak, and Siboney. I've been living here on the unceded Coast Salish territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh, as well as the Kwantlen and many other peoples for about 3 years now. And it's important to me to acknowledge the land that I'm on because I benefit every day from the past and ongoing genocide of Indigenous people on this continent. And I feel that every day settlers occupy stolen land, I have a responsibility to support Indigenous communities in their struggle for sovereignty and self-determination. And also, I view it as an opportunity to express gratitude for the lessons that I get to learn and for the experiences that I get to have on this land, no matter how my people got here. And this evening, the experience that I am treasuring is to be here with you all in conversation with 5 Vancouver authors whose works are either out now or soon to be available. Please join me in welcoming our first guest, queer trans librarian and writer Hazel Jane Plant. Hi, Hazel.
Hi, Rabbit.
Welcome. Please entertain us with your lovely story.
I'm happy to entertain you. Yeah, so I am Hazel Jane Plant. Before I read from my novel, I have a couple of extracts. Before I do that, I wanted to say a couple of words about forthcoming books by a couple of other trans writers who I really deeply admire who have debut collections that are coming out.
Please
One
do.
of whom is, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, It Was Never Going to Be Okay by Jay Simpson, which is coming out in October. So I would say buy this, your present self should buy this for your future self. You will thank yourself. It's very, Back to the Future Part 2. The other book is Zomfam by Kamala Mackerel, which comes out in September. And I read this a few days ago, and literally it made me cry tears of joy. I have not cried a lot of tears of joy lately, so it was fucking fantastic. So I would say get those 2 books. And now I'm going to move into my reading, which would be from my novel Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian. I have 2 brief extracts here, kind of built around the idea, I think, of defiance. Often for me personally, Pride sometimes feels a little bit like a sort of victory lap or a kind of corporate victory lap. So I kind of wanted to foreground this idea of defiance and that there's still a bunch of work that needs to be done. I will say in advance, there's a bit of a content warning that I will mention that suicide happens in the world, and I will mention that there's violence against trans women that happens, but I won't depict either of these 2 things. Okay, here goes. Viv expanded my orbit. She didn't school me on any reductive rules of femininity. She just let me see how she was able to be strong and femme and trans. She also said early on that I could ask her anything. I've always been shy and never want to cross any lines. I'm the sort of person who will get cozy in the bathtub and never want to get out. Even making friends has always seemed like magic when I've seen it happen or it's happened to me. But it's never felt like a magic that I have any control over. When I try to make it happen, I always do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. So I didn't want to ask Viv the wrong question, even though she'd said all questions were acceptable. After a few too many drinks one night, I finally asked her via text message how she remained so confident and unflappable. I sent the text and immediately regretted it, but I couldn't take it back. So I just had another glass or 2 of Malbec, brushed my teeth, and went to bed. The next morning, I saw she'd replied with a cascade of texts. Oh, that. It's gold dust and glitter. It's a perfume I call Defiant Beauty. It smells like, fuck you, I am pretty. I dab it on before I go out. It's yours if you want it. Let's pancake for breakfast, okay? And then I'm going to skip ahead quite a bit in the book here towards the ending. There might be a little bit of a spoiler in here, which I apologize for, but I don't really because it's mentioned in a number of different reviews of the book. Okay. And this I've actually never read in front of people before because I was always worried to make me cry. So we'll see if I cry in a mesh bra tonight. Yeah. Last night, I found myself reading and rereading the poem To My Trans Friends Who Have Also Considered Suicide by Elba Congreve. And then this is the poem. Sometimes thinking about it helps. So go ahead and think about the endless ways of untethering yourself and ending it. But please don't abdicate. Please don't put down your ill-fitting crown. Please don't renounce everything. Yes, being resilient exhausts us. And yes, barbs and fists wound us. And yes, the weight and woos of days is at times too much to weather. And yet, enough of us already barnacle the ocean floors and ghost the plateaus and cloud the skies. Even if it's out of spite, even if it's to say, fuck you, please try to stay alive. It's the tiny line, and yet, that gets me. After a litany of things about being trans that are galling, those two words give me hope somehow. And yet, reminds me of all the things that give me life. And yet, there is art and coffee and friends and cuddling and my cat asleep beside me on the couch. I've been hesitant to talk about how Viv died, but I think it's important to say that Viv didn't commit suicide. That being said, if you don't already know how she died, I won't disclose the details. We aren't defined by how we happen to die. This is my resistance to most events that only focus on reading the names of trans folks and how they were killed. They weren't martyrs who died for a cause. Trans women of color are murdered for trying to live their lives. Clearly, there's a value in saying their names, in remembering them. But I want to know who they were, how they lived, who and what they loved in this world. Thanks.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Hazel. Your book is called Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian. You can all, in addition to seeing this beautiful cover work, see all of my little hanging flags because I am that nerdy. And I don't know who Kevin is at Loki, but good job on this cover.
True.
Very nice. Hazel, I'd love to ask you why Metonymy Press? I'm a newer writer myself, and I think a lot of us find the mechanics of publishing a bit opaque, but it is a choice, so we'd love to hear a bit more.
That's very fair. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Rabbit. Honestly, when I finished my book, I kind of felt like I could only really think of 3 publishers who I thought would maybe do a real service to my book, who I'd be open to working with as my kind of top tier. And none of them were really big publishers, to be honest, because I was like, I don't see a lot of larger publishers at the time, especially publishing books by trans writers and where I wouldn't have to explain a lot of stuff. Like there isn't a lot of like trans 101 stuff in my book at all. There isn't a lot of stuff in there about transitioning and things. So Metonymy has a great history of having published a number of books by trans and queer writers. I mean, that is really what they do, right? I mean, they're the only publisher I know of in this country that is their only focus. Yeah, and they only publish maybe like 1, 2, 3 books a year. Like they're very selective. So they were at the top. I also had another press out of the States called Topside, which was top to bottom trans. Like everyone who worked there, everyone they published was trans. They had gone out of business by the time I sent them a manuscript. And then Arsenal Pulp is another publisher who I would be excited to work with. So those are my top 3. I just wanted someone who I thought would really do a great job with my book and who I really deeply respected. I'm also a librarian, so I do think a lot about those kind of publishers. Yeah.
And about what it looks like from the spine.
It matters. I think, like, yeah, they had
I
a good
love
history
this
with design.
book.
I should say my very good friend, maybe my best friend, probably my best friend, Anjana Young-Hoy, did the illustrations that are actually in this book because it is a novel in the format of an encyclopedia. So there's the armadillo, and I actually happen to have gotten an armadillo tattoo recently, which, like, anyway.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for chatting with us tonight, Hazel.
Thank you so much.
The book is Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian from Autonomy Press. I got my copy from Massey Books, just downtown. And Hazel, if folks want to engage, where can they find you?
That's a great question. Actually, I don't have a Twitter or anything. I don't even have a public Instagram, but I do have a public Facebook, and I have a website. I've heard from a number of people who have sent me emails through my website, surprisingly, and a number of those have made me weep. I'm just like, wow.
Excellent. And that's HazelJanePlant.
HazelJanePlant.com. Yeah, I should have said that.
Very good. Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you again.
Our next author tonight is a musician, a filmmaker, and an award-winning writer, Aaron Chan. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me here. This is so awesome.
I felt really special reading my copy of your beautiful book. I have your signature. It's so exciting.
Oh.
Would you please share some of your book with us?
I would love to. Thanks, Rabbit. So I will be reading from a chapter in my book, This City is a Minefield, called All the Ways to Say I'm Gay, which is about all the different ways that I have come out over the years. Also, in case you don't have a gaydar, I am gay. The very...
I'm so glad.
I'm here to provide that service. So the very first time I came out, I was 7 years old in the 3rd grade at Maple Grove Elementary School, which is in Kerrisdale, where I grew up. And in those days, and kind of, I think probably also still to this day, kids used to hear words maybe from grown-ups that they didn't really know the definition of, and so they would kind of pass these words through whispers at school, and it would be like a fun kind of like taunt, joke, insult thing of the, like a word of the week, and that happened every so often at my elementary school. And so on this one particular day, it was recess, and when I went out to the schoolyard, people were saying this word, gay. I hadn't heard this word before, and so when I went up to a classmate and I asked them, what's this gay thing mean? They responded, oh, that's when a boy likes another boy and a girl likes another girl. It also means happy, but that's not as fun. And I had actually known that I liked boys, even at my young age. I had known for years already, but I never thought that there was a word that existed for how I felt. And so when I learned about this word, everything kind of just made sense to me. That it just clicked. I felt like a part of me had finally been validated. It was such a revelation. It was so much so that I proceeded to literally skip around the playground of my school, shouting, I'm gay, I'm gay. Kind of like this. I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay. Like that. It was very gay. I was very gay. And actually I wasn't like bullied or harassed by anyone at all. Everyone just continued playing their game of tag and shouting, you're gay, no, you're gay, you're the gayest, at each other obliviously. Then I spotted an adult supervisor sitting on a bench nearby, and I felt so emboldened and so confident at my newfound joy that I decided I needed to tell her too. So I crept up behind her as quietly as I could, and I leaned into her ear and I said, "I'm gay." And then I proceeded to frolic away because I didn't want a confrontation. But unfortunately for me, she called me back, and being the adult fearing child that I was, I obeyed and I went back to her. And she told me, "Where did you hear that word from? That word only means happy. It doesn't mean anything else. Don't you dare think it means anything else. Do you understand?" While she was saying this, I started crying, and by the time she finished her last question, I was only able to manage a slight nod. She dismissed me, and I ran off to the bathroom, complete blubbering mess, wondering how this stranger thought she knew me better than I knew myself. And it would be another 10 years before I was physically able to say the word gay again. The end.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, This City is a Minefield is quite a title. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about why you called this book This City is a Minefield?
Sure, I would love to. Many years ago, I went through a really, really tough breakup with my partner at the time. Long story short, I tried to win him back. It went terribly, and I basically ended up experiencing a lot of anxiety. It so much so that when I visited certain places in Vancouver, or saw him around campus, or saw things and heard things that reminded me of him, I experienced anxiety attacks. It got so bad to the point where I just couldn't visit. I just couldn't go to certain places in Vancouver anymore, and I felt like Vancouver became a mental minefield for me. The title itself comes from a line in a poem that I wrote. "The city is a minefield, a haunted house I cannot escape." That poem is in my poetry chapbook called Romantic Hopeless, which you can buy on my website.
Adding that to my list. Thanks so much, Aaron. Just one thing I would like to ask you in addition.
Yeah.
How is Batman?
She's doing well. I guess I should provide some context in case people are like, huh? Batman is the name of my cat. She's a black and white cat, and it looks like she has a Batman mask on. She's doing very well. She doesn't like the heat. She's mostly just melting into the floor these days. But I'll
Me too.
I'll send her your regards.
Thank you. The book is This City is a Minefield, out from Signal 8 Press. Aaron, where can folks buy your book?
You can buy it at your local independent bookstore. I recommend Massey Books and The Paper Hound. They are awesome. You can also buy a signed copy through my website if you want, at theaaronchan.com. And actually right now I'm doing an Instagram giveaway where I'm including a signed copy of The City is a Minefield, my poetry chapbook, and a snazzy bookmark. Yeah, so
Well,
yeah.
Don't miss out on that. Go run maybe after 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate having you along.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we will have work from 3 more authors to share with you. Eddie Boudel-Tan is coming up. David Lee is coming up. And as well, Betsy Warland. You won't want to miss it.
Vancouver Pride 2020.
Hi, my name is Kiara Fung.
And my name is Gunjan Kundal.
With all the, the pandemic and all the negative news, it's kind of brought, a lot of positive and negative feelings towards everything. And we chose to focus on the positives, and we realized that love is definitely, a stronger force in everything. It's definitely very healing, and so our cocktail is called Love Conquers All. So it's featuring Stoli cucumber as well as mango shrub. Shrubs are super easy to make in the summertime, really popular. All you need is fruit, sugar, and water. So I've got a mango shrub, and I'm going to pair it with a little bit of rosemary, and it's going to pair really nicely with the Stoli cucumber. So she is first going to lightly muddle 3 sprigs of rosemary. If you don't have shaker tins at home, you can use a protein shaker cup. And if you don't have a muddler, you can use basically the back of a wooden spoon or anything you can find in the kitchen. And that's just going to accentuate and bring out all the wonderful aromas that rosemary have. And then she's going to add 1.25 ounces of cucumber. And when I was actually doing some research on this cocktail, I didn't know that mangoes and rosemary symbolically actually represent love and kindness. So it's kind of ties into the theme here of the cocktail. And then after that, you're going to put half an ounce of lime juice. And then just going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of saline solution. It's essentially just salt water. It's going to kind of take down the bitterness that you kind of find with the Stoli, and as well kind of harmonize all the flavors together. And then I'm just going to do 3 ounces of the mango shrub. And shrubs, you can easily find amazing recipes online. You can literally use any fruit that's available. And I decided to use a mango pulp, which you can get in cans at a grocery store. Fresh mangoes you can also use as well. I'm just going to give that a nice little shake here. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
We've been out of the game for a while.
Not really, but dry shake.
Yeah. And then she's going to double strain it into a tall Collins glass that's rimmed with an anchovy salt. And we've just got this beautiful mango color, kind of that sweet and tangy taste there from the vinegar. She's going to take a White Claw mango seltzer, which is essentially a hard seltzer, and she's going to top that up there. And then she's going to put a cucumber ribbon in there. And these are really easy to do. All you need is just a Y peeler along with the cucumber. Takes practice. Perfect. And last but not least, just a rosemary sprig to finish it off here. Beautiful. And if you're not indulging in any alcohol, we do have a free spirited version. It's essentially just the mango shrub, the lime juice, and then instead of the seltzer, you would just top it up with seltzer, soda water. So there you go. Love conquers all.
Cheers.
Welcome back to our Writers Showcase. My name is Rabbit Richards, and we're here at the office of the Vancouver Pride Society. And our next guest is literary escape artist Eddie Boudel-Tan. Eddie, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Rabbit.
Hi.
Cheers. Happy Pride Week to
Oh,
Vancouver.
okay. All right. I asked for a drink too, and they gave me this tankard.
Nice.
So I'm just gonna hug this while you read.
Clink.
Clink.
It is happy hour after all, right? How are you, Rabbit? Good to be here.
I'm doing great. And your beautiful novel is called After Elias and is not available. This is the worst tease of the night.
Not yet. Yeah. So After Elias is my debut novel. It's going to be out September 12th from Dundurn, so look out.
Wonderful. Will you share some with us?
Yeah, so it is. So I'm going to read, of course, from this book. It really is about the story of a pilot's last words before he flies an airplane into the sea a week before his wedding day. And it examines our society's definitions of happiness and what happens when we have nothing left to hide behind. So just as a bit of setup before I read a scene from the story, the story centers on a queer couple, two men from very different cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds who are engaged to be married, Cohen and Elias. And they are on the cusp of getting everything they've ever dreamed of. They're going to get married, celebrate their love among family and friends on this perfect island in Mexico. And in that moment, their love will be solidified. It'll be undeniable. Then, of course, tragedy strikes. And the story really follows the fiance, Cohen, as he struggles to make sense of his new reality. He's on the island in Mexico. It's a week before the wedding. And he learns that Elias's plane has crashed into the sea. And, struggling with the grief, struggling with this new reality, he refuses to go home to Vancouver. He insists on staying in the island. He insists on going forward with the event, not as a wedding, but as a celebration of Elias's life. So as his friends and family arrive on the island, as the lead up to this event happens, he begins to question everything he thought he knew about Elias and their life together. So the scene that I'm going to read to you happens on the day of the celebration. And Cohen is recalling the only time he's ever seen Elias cry. Okay. I only ever saw Elias cry once. I don't often tear up myself. I'm not tender like Decker. I'm not impassioned like Vivi. My life has taught me methods of self-preservation. Even so, Elias was often present when the tears did come. He knew what to do in these instances, how to comfort me. Over 8 years, I only got one chance to reciprocate. It happened a year ago. We rented a large house on Bowen Island for the weekend. It had soaring ceilings, wooden beams, and an enormous deck that looked out toward a grassy lawn. Past the lawn was a pebbly beach that embraced a swimming cove, its water clear and greener than the ocean beyond. It was the weekend of our engagement party. That afternoon, I peeked through the picture window from the second floor landing and saw that guests were beginning to arrive. Vivi, Decker, and Samantha were on greeting duty downstairs, while Elias and I were prepared for our entrance. Everything was going according to plan, except for one thing. Elias was nowhere to be found. I hadn't seen him for at least an hour. I focused on getting dressed and decided to have faith that Elias would show up as expected. I was doing a fairly decent job of remaining calm until Samantha came upstairs to tell me all the guests had arrived. She must have been able to tell something was wrong, but she just smiled and retreated down the stairs. It took several minutes to find Elias. I searched the entire floor, opening every closet door, getting down on my knees to peer underneath every bed. The thought of Elias hiding under a bed should have struck me as ridiculous, but it didn't. Finally, I opened the door to a bathroom attached to one of the guest rooms, and there he was, sitting on the floor, his back against the wall, his knees tucked in against his chest, his face in his hands. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. It was Elias, but in a position I had never seen him in before. He turned toward me at the sound of the door and then quickly hid his face away. But it was enough time for me to see the pink hue in his eyes and the tears glistening on his cheek. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Just give me a minute, please. I'll meet you outside." His voice shook. I walked over to his side and slid down to the ground with my back against the wall. We sat there for a while without saying a word. He wiped his eyes and stared down at the floor in front of him, realizing there was no point in hiding his face from me. I don't remember what was going through my mind, but I felt at peace. Perhaps it was reassuring to see that the man I loved was also susceptible to the inner ebbs and flows of being human. This time, I could be the strong one. Eventually, I broke the silence. "We don't have to go through with this. It's okay if this isn't what you want," I said, calmly stating what I thought to be obvious. He looked at me, surprised. "That has nothing to do with it," he said. "I'm not trying to call off the engagement. I want this." It was my turn to be surprised. "Then why were you sitting on the bathroom floor crying by yourself?" He looked away, embarrassed, struggling to find an answer. I knew how he must have felt then. Why is such an easy thing to ask? These questions always sounded like accusations to me. I hated how simplistic they were, as though expressing the shifting winds inside me as words were as simple as stating the color of my eyes. I rarely understood these winds myself. Now I was the one compelling a man to justify his storm to someone who was sheltered from it. "It's too much," Elias said. "This event, this life, our future, you. I know I should feel happy and grateful. I want to feel this way, but all I feel is..." I waited for him to finish his thought, but he sat there in silence. "How do you feel?" I asked gently. I don't think he knew how to answer this question. He turned to me, the satellites in his eyes shining sharply, and I knew this would be the only answer he could offer. "I don't deserve any of this." "We only ever get what we deserve," I responded. He looked at me then, contemplating what I said before leaning in to kiss me. Now, standing here on our wedding day, as I look out over the courtyard of the Mohican Hotel, I breathe in the scent of his aftershave and feel the dampness of his cheek against mine. He's here with me. We both got what we deserved.
Well, thank you for that. I made it through easily half of my tankard.
Awesome. That was my plan all along.
All along. You write with such a delicacy when you're talking about emotional subjects. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Eddie, you've described your novel as a modern queer tragedy. Would you tell us a little bit more about what you meant by that?
Yeah. So I've been describing it as a modern queer tragedy, partly because it sounds so dramatic, like the novel itself, but it also really rings true to my intention for the story. Like I said, it centers on the relationship of Cohen and Elias, these two men who are on the verge of getting everything they've ever wanted. And in a lot of ways, their story is meant to mirror this current era that we live in, at least in Canada, when it comes to the LGBTQ2IA plus community. You know, we're in this era of corporate sponsored pride celebrations and marriage equality, all these things that previous generations have had to fight for. And the novel questions, where do we go from here? What happens next? And what have we sacrificed because of it? And in a lot of ways, it's also a warning in that, sure, you know, we enjoy this mainstream acceptance to a degree now, but it can all be taken away just like that. The suffering that our community has endured is always within arm's reach. And we see it all over the world today, where there are public attitudes and government policies that are actually regressing when it comes to our rights and freedoms. So in a way, it is a modern queer tragedy, and it's also equally a warning of sorts.
Yeah, I agree. From my writer heart, I agree.
Awesome.
You've traveled extensively. What made you pick the locations that you did as a setting? Why Mexico?
Oh, good question. So yeah, I'm very much a traveler. I love experiencing different people, different cultures around the world. I chose Mexico partly because it has a very special personal place in my heart, but also this story is all about death. It's about dying and death and the reverence of death, and the Mexican culture, both its indigenous culture and its colonized culture, has a real distinct reverence for death. And you see it all across the country in the way they pay homage and respect to those they've lost. So I felt that response and treatment of death, something that is so tragic that people often don't like to think about here in Canada, was so apt and so fitting for the story. And when you read the story, you'll kind of see how that informs the cultural context, really informs Cohen's I guess catharsis, his journey of healing through the lens of the culture that he finds himself in, which is Mexico.
Well, so in order for us to read this book, we have to be extremely patient. We have to wait all the way to September, and then we need to remember that it is from Dundurn. Is that correct? And then, is there a pre-order available for this book?
It is. Yeah.
Is there
if you go to the website.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Go to the website of your favorite local bookseller, type in the title, my name. You can also find it in some of the bigger places like Chapters Indigo, Barnes & Noble in the US, anything and everywhere. Yeah. Stick to the local bookstore. Go to your favorite local bookseller and you can pre-order now, or you can wait till September.
And the book is called After Elias. Thank you so much for joining us, Eddie. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Peace. Enjoy.
Next up, we're going to be speaking with Vancouver-based poet David Lee. Hi, David.
Hi, Rabbit.
Hello. Your fledgling collection of poetry is entitled Mythical Man, available from Anne Struther Books out of Palimpsest
That's
Press.
correct.
Would you like to read some for us?
I'll read 5 poems from it. Here it is.
Yes.
Ooh,
Yay!
good on
Oh,
screen.
look, mine matches yours. I use the same colors.
Look how good that looks.
It's a good book.
All right. I just wanted a blue Hawaiian. Lady Gaga gives a million reasons to dance closer to the emptiness, but I stay at the bar half shouting to the lip-syncing bartender to get his attention. I want a blue Hawaiian to replace my shattered Long Island iced tea. A hand cut from marble reaches past me to pay for my drink. I turn, putting tongue to teeth, but he winks before thank you slips from my lips. His monster jawline and cerulean-eyed kindness makes me wonder if he did it because he wants to know me or knows there are millions of me. Next poem is Good Morning, Babes. 3 a.m, let's get chicken nuggets. Let's laugh our way out of the junction, where the bass keeps pulsing in our chests. Quick, wave that cab. Summer rains, skinny denim shorts, damp, low-cut tees plastered to our backs. Here, paper plates bleed onto the street. The rainbow crosswalk, so white at first light. This one is called Disco the Pug is Mine. I haven't adopted him yet, but he's mine. Other things can be yours, the lava lamp, the shake weight, the room where you write, but Disco can wander in whenever he feels like it. You can't write poems about Disco, just don't. He won't appreciate your words concerning his buggy eyes, how you liken them to the cartoon that traumatized you when you were a child. If the lava lamp spooks him, then we'll have to donate it. When you use the shake weight and it agitates Disco, because it obviously will, then take a step back and reconsider where your priorities are in this relationship. Your arms aren't getting any bigger. And we'll have to get Disco a stick. If we snap your old lacrosse stick, that could work. Don't give me that. You know I didn't agree to our first date because you're a great lacrosse player. You know I hate sports. But disco needs to run, needs exercise, needs to chase something, needs you to need me and what I need, needs you to stop running after a different version of what I'm offering here. This piece is called In the Back of the Sunfire. The rubber is ripped off, tossed, somewhere at your feet. August feels like it will go on forever when I bite your bottom lip, shifting between wants and needs, rocking back and forth on top. I hope to know you by more than the sweetness of your pre-cum. But when I catch my breath, summer slips away, like the sensation of your body sliding out of mine. This last one is called Waking at the Beginning of the World. I guess I didn't let go when the time before came to an end. With a single pull, you burst from rock, eras projecting in all directions. One sliced my chin, another grazed our hands as they unclasped. Burgundy eyelashes, a smile, and you grabbed my wrist, bolted for dunes that rolled on and on. I swear, every step made the desert seem more vast. There, a serpent stopped us as it burst from the sand, bulbous black head staring us down, flicking its leathery tongue, opening its mouth and inviting us inside. With your free hand, you calmly stroked one of its fangs. I shuddered when it simultaneously snapped its jaws shut, dove back into the sand, shifting sparkling grains on the surface as it swerved beneath. You let go of me, broke into a chase after it. I followed. Now we run towards the beasts.
Wow. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Especially thank you because Disco the Pug is Mine is my favorite poem in this entire collection. I love that poem, and I'm so glad that everyone got to hear it. So Lady Gaga comes up for you quite a lot, and I'm wondering if you'd like to tell us about what your connection is to the lady who keeps showing up in your poem.
The only lady who shows up in my poem. No, I listened to her music and a lot of other pop music when I was writing this collection. I listened to a lot of music while I'm writing, and I think somehow they just find their way into my works. I have music on a lot when I write. Just hearing it really puts me at ease or something, and something about the tones and the melodies really can get me into like the rhythm of writing a poem. So she's there.
I find the same. I notice, I think personally in my own writing, something that I don't flinch from is recognizing sexuality. And it's definitely something that a lot of writers are shy of. But I wonder if it feels natural for you, or has there been sort of a journey to get to this comfort level of being, I wouldn't say explicit, but certainly clear about your sexuality in your work?
I don't think it's ever a process. I think it was always kind of clear to me. I think it might have occurred to me that, oh, maybe it isn't so clear to some people, because I have gotten that a lot where I'm so explicit in my writing. But I don't really care. If I'm like, I feel like it comes natural to me. I'm a pretty open person. I'll talk about anything. So it's there in my work. And it's what I know best. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of talking about anything, you've got a poem in this collection that was written after a poem of Leah Horlick's.
Oh, yeah.
I really need to go find that collection by Leah Horlick. So
Leah,
thank you for the reference.
Yeah, that collection is called For Your Own Good. And I really love Leah's writing. And that one poem she has in that collection called Amulet is like a stunning piece. So I wrote one kind of like a sister poem to it. It's called Talisman in the collection. And it's, I'm glad it made it into the book.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really special thing when we get to connect with each other and demonstrate community to the outside world. The book is called Mythical Man. It is available in stores now. Shout out to Massey Books, who delivered it directly to my door, contactless. It's a wonderful arrangement that they've set up for us. David, thank you so much for joining
You're
us
welcome.
today.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Well, our final author this evening is a mentor, a teacher, a manuscript consultant, and an editor. Please join me in welcoming Betsy Warland.
Oh, there we go.
There we are. Hello.
Um,
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Thank you to Vancouver Pride Society and Vancouver Writers Festival for making this possible. Been doing a great job hosting it, and all of you guys that have organized it have been great. And I also want to acknowledge the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam Peoples Nations. My background goes back to Norway, and so this is as close to Norway as I can get in Canada in terms of the landscape and the feel.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful to be here. Lived here now for a long time. And I want to say hello, a shout out to Pride Land, all of us.
Yeah.
You know, and I really enjoyed hearing each of these writers. So tonight I'm going to do something a little bit different in this reading. I'm reading from a book that came out in 1984. It was my second book. I think I'm missing my, I seem to always want to go this way. Okay. Right. It was,
That's all right. We can see.
I wrote it in concert with another, my partner at the time, Daphne Marlatt. We were together for 12 years. And it was the first erotic love poems between two lesbian lovers in Canada. And insanely, somehow, we went across the country reading from these books in 1984. To my knowledge, that still has never happened again, where two lesbian writers write erotic love poems to each other and they're published in books. So that's a kind of, someone do it. We shouldn't have to wait for how long ago? That was 36 years ago. It's crazy, right? Can you imagine a heterosexual writing couple never having written poems in concert in terms of love for erotic poems? No. So
I can't imagine a 30-year gap in anything that has to.
Yeah, and so it's, I'm going to read a couple from those, and in between I'm going to read from my most recent book, Lost Lagoon. And the only other thing I want to mention is that partly how I have learned to refresh the language for me is to work with etymology, because etymology goes back to the very roots of the word, and often my feeling and instinct about that word is in the etymology, but in current contemporary usage, it's like, I don't even want to use that word, right? So it's something that you'll see in these books, and in both of them there is a bit of etymology. The leaves witness you unsheathing me. My bud, quivering in your mouth, you leaf me, leaf, peel off. In front of a window full of green eyes, we climb the green ladder, clitoris, incline, climax. On the tip of your tongue, you flick me, leaf, lift up to tip tree top, point of all I am to the sky, roof of the world. Leaves sink slow into darkening. With my resin on your swollen lips, leave us in our betrothal, truth, tree. The book that just came out in April Lost Lagoon, Lost in Thought, is the main subject is Lost Lagoon, which I live very close to. And this is the first poem that came to me. It's a prose poem. They're all prose poems. And this is the first one that came to me that sort of fell into my lap. And I thought, And then other poems over time started coming, and it took me a while to realize, I guess this is a manuscript. It just sought me out. So here's the first one. The human is at a loss for words, considers and considers, wonders. Is this loss of words perhaps why the human is a writer? The desire to describe something that the human cherishes makes words scatter like a flock of startled bush tits. The very word cherishes is suspect. Passé. Okay, the human thinks again. Let's begin with its name, Lost Lagoon. Its very name is a conundrum. How can one misplace a lagoon? Standing on the shore, any passerby can observe it's not a lagoon, but a small lake or perhaps a pond. Over the decades, the human has walked around the lagoon, chatting with various companions, but now dwelling close to it, lives with it. The difference between around and with. Difference between pointing with a camera, voice, or index finger, and standing still, watching, listening, sniffing, occasionally speaking softly or returning a bird's call. Just across the street from the high and low rise buildings, cheek and jowleness, Lost Lagoon life is, once again, the human is at a loss for words. The lagoon resists being depicted, summed up. The human admires this. In the spring, the human happened upon a strange sight on the lagoon. Two swans, a few feet from the shore, faced each other, held their necks and heads together, creating the shape of a heart. One then curved its neck over the others, and both simultaneously dipped and submerged their heads and necks up to their bodies, then raised their heads into the same position, and repeated this elegant gesture numerous times. Mesmerized, the human wondered, is this a mating ritual? Later, found out it was. This exquisiteness now resides within the human. A year later, looking up the etymology root of swan, the human discovers it shares the Latin root with sonnet, sonata. This poem, if you can imagine standing, it's actually written on Galliano Island on active past, way up high on the bluffs. And Daphne and I were standing side by side. And again, this works with etymology, and it's dealing with the word wind. No words. Listen. Wind of our being, air, aura. Wing each a wing, riding our own wind, weather, storm, way, wing to blow, wing, each a wing, the body invisible between us. Vate, she blows, nirvana. The body, nirvana between us. Thank you, Hazel. Thank
Betsy,
you.
thank you. Gosh, I spent so many moments of just peaceful contemplation with your work. I mean, this has been probably one of the busiest summers of my life, and I found so many moments, even in the text of your book, where you specifically talk about the idea of consideration, of taking time with thoughts, letting them go where they go. A lot of this book feels a lot like a meditation. How do you make space for that kind of rumination?
Good question. I've been a practicing Buddhist for a long time, so that's training, right? It really helps train me and practice and get used to doing that. But it also goes back to when I grew up, because I grew up in a rural area. And for a variety of reasons, known and unknown to me, I was pretty much, I was on my own a lot, and I was in nature a lot. So when I had recent PR photos taken, because mine were so out of date, the photographer asked me at one point, and we were around Moss Lagoon and near the forest a bit, and she said, how do you feel about trees? And I said, trees? Trees raised me. And I really meant it. It was so visceral. I had never even said that before. But it's like, they were my people, the trees. You know, that's who comforted me. That's who taught me about life. They were always there, you know, but changing all the time. So I guess in one respect, it goes way back to being a child. But being a practitioner, I guess, really deepened that. And for me, mostly what writing is about, essentially, and at the heart, is listening. Really listening deeply. That's when it comes through, that narrative that you've been chosen to write. That's when it comes through. If I start getting too many ideas about what it should be, it just kind of dead in the water, basically. So the act of writing itself is basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I also recognize that in myself, that there are some things that I can dash off quickly on a phone or something, but there is definitely a meditative aspect to sitting to write, as opposed to allowing the thought to happen at the same time as the rest of the world. Yeah, I really want to thank you for sharing your art with us today. I really appreciate how you localized to place so specifically that what you're sharing couldn't be about anywhere else. And I feel like that brings the universality of appeal, because we know where it is. And I really resonated
I'm so glad
with your
you
work
said
in
that,
way.
because, I think I know we all feel so easily overwhelmed and hopeless, so on every level of being, things have to change, and they just have to, and so in terms of if you're concerned about the climate and nature and what's happening to it, which the book has quite a bit about, it's the intimacy with nature that then restores hope, restores a conviction and even a pleasure of saying, yes, it does matter. Yes, my caring about this natural environment around me matters, and it knows, it feels it too. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a fascinating evening of conversation. I would really like to bring all of our authors back to the screen for a moment so you can all wave at each other and the world at one time. I really hope that you've all enjoyed hearing from them. I'd also like to thank Brooke and Melanie, our interpreters for
Yes,
the
thank you
evening.
again.
I hope that you will be hopping right over to your local booksellers' websites and getting your hands on all this abundance, all these beautiful stories. I want to wish you all a very happy Pride. I would like you to stay safe and wash your hands and keep reading. My name is Rabbit Richards, and from the Pride office, I'd like to wish you all a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbit.
Thank you.